Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Education USA Thursday live session. I am Ramya Ashok, an advisor at Yashna Trust, the Education USA Center at Bangalore. This session is brought to you by Yashna Trust Education USA Bangalore in collaboration with the US Consulate General, Chennai. Today, I'm joined by Niky Chokshi from Arizona State University. Hello, Niky.
Hi, Ramya.
Niky Chokshi is a recruitment advisor and alumni liaison at Arizona State University in India. She was previously the Associate Director of Global Community Engagement at the Thunderbird School of Global Management in Phoenix, Arizona. As a graduate of Thunderbird, she has lived and worked across 4 continents and numerous countries in roles spanning higher education and healthcare. Niky is originally from Tanzania and finds immense value in bringing together people from different countries, cultures, and disciplines. Today, Niky is here with us to talk about selecting the right fit university in the US. Over to you, Niky. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Ramya. So before we get started, I'd like to share our slides here in selecting the best fit university. So what we'll do is we'll have a very informal type of discussion. And if you wish to have your questions answered, please feel free to ask your questions at any point in time throughout the session. So without further ado, we'll get started with the slides. So some topics of discussion that we have today are going to start off with the factors. There's 6 or 7 key factors which I'll be covering that we'll be assessing for you to determine and do the due diligence and research to understand how to determine which university to which you've been admitted will be the best fit for you. Through this process, we'll also be discussing the pitfalls to avoid a typical mindset challenge that we may face, and of course, keeping key decision makers engaged as well during this entire process, keeping in mind that there are always deadlines that are coming up, not only with a specific university in terms of deposits, but also I-20 deadlines, visa appointment times, paperwork, pre-departure orientation, etc. So let us get started with the factors to determine, evaluate the right fit. So as I mentioned, there are a few factors that I wanted to typically cover today. This is not a fully comprehensive list, of course. There's lots of different tangents here, but faculty. On the academic side, I wanted to touch upon a little bit on why is it important to understand and do a bit more research on faculty. Of course, location and campus are really important as well. You want to familiarize yourself with the geography of where you've been admitted to in terms of where the university is located in the US. Total cost might be extremely important to us, of course, in terms of scholarships, RAships, TAships that are being offered to us. And then, of course, we're thinking of long-term return on investment. So we're going to be looking at the career management services, what that really means for you when you're admitted to 3 different institutions, for example, and how to really leverage this time to position yourself to be successful in terms of getting an internship or a job after, and how to really leverage the alumni network and what that means for you. So take a really quick look at these factors, maybe start a running list that will help you understand, for me, which of these factors would be my top priority followed by my second or third priority, because everyone has different parameters which are important to them and to their key decision makers in consideration as well. So moving on to discussing about faculty. So one of the primary reasons, if not the main reason for a student to be going to the US to study for their bachelor's or their master's or doctorate degree is for the academic instruction, right? So when we look at different types of industry experts who will be teaching us as professors, as faculty, what are their backgrounds? For example, if you're going into a program that is very heavily research oriented, or that may not be research oriented, where you may hope to have either an RAship or a TAship under a professor, it's really important to understand that you want to do as much research as possible ahead of time before you even set foot on campus. What does this really mean? So faculty profiles are typically available on most college websites. If you don't find faculty that are clearly listed under a particular school within a college, you want to look further into the department. I wouldn't recommend randomly reaching out to them, so to speak, without any rhyme or reason. But it's certainly important to understand if you're looking for research opportunities in the future, if the degree you're about to go and pursue will be a stepping stone for you, a launch pad for you into a research-oriented degree, or a hybrid degree maybe, then it's really important to understand, are the interests of the faculty members and the expertise that they have in terms of relations with the industry, is that going to be beneficial for me? And how will I be able to utilize that? So if you're going for a degree that's not focused on research at all, it's still important to at least have a cursory glance at who the faculty in your department might be. Chances are you might still be taking classes under them when you attend in your first or second or subsequent semesters as well. And I also wanted to mention, you'll notice that we're in an interdisciplinary environment, right? So what does this really mean? When you look at education in the USA, you will find that if you've been admitted into a certain department of a certain discipline, say that is a business program or an engineering program, professors are really encouraging to the point where they have an open door policy. They want to help you understand better if you have an idea for a startup that might involve several different departments to bring that idea to fruition. How can they be the catalyst to really help you bring that to life or really develop that further? So it's really important to stay in touch with faculty once you're there, of course, but use this time to research a lot more on the professors who will be teaching, if they have interesting research specializations, if there are opportunities such as venture capital pitch competitions on campus that a faculty is organizing. That is a great foot in the door for many students who have been considering starting their own venture as well.
Entrepreneurship.
Yes. So we'll move on to the next slide. So location, right? We'll talk about location and then campuses next. But so I have a very simple map of the US here. And it's important to understand that while universities will say, every university or college will have a great deal of pros and cons, so to speak, to their locations, right? It is up to the student to really determine, is this the location that will be best suited for me? If you have a moment to self-reflect as a student, historically, what has worked for you in the sense that, are you more drawn towards a more urban environment? For example, a campus that may not necessarily have marked a gated campus, so to speak, right? Or are you looking for a more suburban campus that may have, you know, a marked campus and an area of land where most of the buildings and dorms and residence halls are? Or are you looking for more rural campuses where you might have been also admitted, and what is the environment over there as well? So you don't only want to look at where it is located in terms of urban, suburban versus rural, but also the amount of diversity you'll find in terms of cultural diversity, in terms of professional development opportunities, the types of companies that are located there. Of course, that's not the end all be all, that's simply a starting point for you, but you will be spending a fair amount of time there, whether that's a 1-year degree or a 2-year master's program, or maybe even a 4-year bachelor's degree that you will be attending there. You will be spending a fair amount of time. And for example, if you might be in an area such as the Northeast, which has all 4 seasons, you would have to prepare accordingly, right? For someone who might have certain health issues or may not be too familiar with the cold or comfortable with the cold, that may pose a challenge, of course. So these are all things that you want to consider, right? Again, a small town versus a large metro areas, there's always different types of value added to every location. You just have to make sure that you're doing enough research in terms of the cost of living over there as well. So talking about campuses, right? You may have been admitted to several different universities that may have simply one campus or simply may have different campuses or adjunct campuses, which may be in the same metro area or slightly farther away. What does this really mean? This is a great time right now as you're analyzing which admits that you've received, how you can choose amongst them, to start researching and reaching out to students, right? Yeah. Current students, they are currently there. They are the best source of information for you to understand what is the reality on the ground right now. What are the weather patterns like? How do the students get around in terms of transportation? What are the resources available around the campuses, right? I also mentioned the number and size of campuses as well. So size in the sense that if you see that a campus is massive in the sense it's more than 10 to 20, maybe over 50,000 or something of that sort.
Yeah.
There's always a benefit to that as well, in the sense that there's always someone new that you can meet, always someone new that you can network with. We always say that the US is the land of opportunity and the land of networking as well. So it's always important to understand that, yes, while it may be intimidating to be on a large campus, there is a certain vibrancy or a certain undercurrent there that really brings it alive, right? You can always have and create your own group of friends and your own group of professional colleagues, et cetera, on that campus. A smaller campus will offer you a more tight-knit community, which may have a lot more in terms of student clubs, such as I mentioned Greek life and athletics here. So it's not necessary that a college might meet at a massive size and will offer a lot more in terms of athletics. There might also be a much smaller school who is competing in the Pac-12 at a very competitive level, for example, right? So you want to be mindful of all of these things. It's important to understand while you're looking at campuses that while one size doesn't fit all, right? The admits you might have received might be varied across a smaller school, a small to medium sized school, or a larger school. But what does that mean when it comes down to class sizes, right? Yeah. Every student who will enter an undergraduate or a graduate or a doctoral so to speak, will have core classes, a mix of elective classes. What are the actual class sizes? Again, current students will really be able to help you with that. Reach out to the university representatives. They'll be able to tell you more about that. If you've had an interaction with faculty, they're really, really helpful in terms of assessing it. What kind of a class will you be going into when you're in the core section of classes, which might be in the first or second semester. Then moving ahead from there, you will be taking elective classes, which are typically a lot smaller, a lot more intimate in the sense that it's more discussion based to a certain extent. So keep all of these things in mind, and simply because a university you might be admitted to a certain campus may not mean that you're forced to go out and network and socialize all the time. There's always spaces on all campuses that are safe spaces, so to speak, that a student can always leverage and use as kind of their area to recharge, right?
There are also places where the students can just sit and study.
Absolutely.
And study areas and nice. Just move on.
So now comes the large question of cost, right? So cost for most of us might be the primary factor or the primary parameter that we're using to analyze, okay, which of these universities do I go to, right? So every person's situation or status is different. It entirely would depend on, first of all, you want to have a base idea. What are the tuition and fees? What is the actual total cost? Now, while this may be difficult to determine, most universities have cost calculators on their website. So you want to go onto the website. If you don't find these, definitely reach out to the representatives, the admissions representatives of the university. They're happy to help you out to determine the total cost. Understand that the tuition fees that might be shown to you may be separate from living expenses, right? So things such as room and board, so accommodation, residence halls if you choose to stay on campus, or apartments if you choose to stay off campus, right? Cost of living might vary depending on if you're going to take an apartment off campus in a suburban area versus a completely urban area where it might be slightly higher.
Commuter campuses.
Right, commuter campuses, what is the cost of transportation? What is the accessibility of transportation? So when you factor all of these opportunity costs in it, and understanding, well, this university is more urban, so to speak, with this type of cost versus University B, all of these things play a part, right?
Very important. Yes,
exactly. And understanding the financial aid package that you might have received in terms of scholarships or RATAships, so research assistantships or teaching assistantships that, or sometimes even fellowships that are awarded to students who have just been admitted. It's important to understand, how will that scholarship be applied throughout my time at the university? Is it an amount that has been awarded to me that will be taken out of the tuition, and the remaining tuition I will have to pay per semester, or is that amount applied towards the first entire year? And is that scholarship amount renewable, right? It's important to ask all these questions ahead of time, because when it comes time to receive the I-20, for which you have to show your financial documents and your financial amounts, whether that's a loan you're showing, whether that's personal funds or family funds or other means, it's important that the university understands that you're able to show that you have financial support sufficient enough to help you at least get you by for the first year at a bare minimum, right? So use all these resources that you have to your advantage. It's not necessary that just because a university might be providing a lot more scholarship than a certain other university that has priority. And I say the same about rankings as well, that I didn't mention at the beginning, right? Rankings are not the end all be all, right? To a certain extent, every university you'll be admitted into will have a great ranking in a certain discipline, right? Ultimately, what is the long-term return on investment you'd like to get out of this university? Now, a lot of these, I tell students, you know, alumni network is a very important one personally, because it's a very important concept in the US. I don't want to use the word placement, but career services. So jobs, internships are very important to most of us, but what is the cost at which we're going to incur that we may have to pay back in terms of paying back a loan? Because these are our realities. So if cost is a major factor for you, really try and break it down as much as possible, and try and keep a significant amount of a cushion or a padding, so to speak, so that personally you know that you're not going to be sitting in classes trying to focus on academics with this issue of cost, or this issue of how will I be able to pay fees alongside, right? So many students, as you might know, they typically work on campus for part-time on campus. So they work up to 20 hours a week on campus when you're on the F1 visa. So what this does is this really helps you offset the cost of maybe food or certain, you know, transportation. It might not help you with the cost of tuition, of course, but every little bit
amount
helps.
of living.
Exactly. And I think every little bit helps, and the amount that you might save or put towards that can then be applied to tuition, of course.
Absolutely.
Right?
And one more thing I also wanted to ask you is, there might be some hidden costs, right? Maybe a lab or a yoga studio that a student wants to. So all of these things they can ask beforehand, isn't it?
Absolutely. You know, absolutely. And this is what I say. This is why I say reach out to current students, see what they have faced, reach out to the administrators and ask, well, what is the health insurance policy? This is the time to be asking that, right? Because health insurance may be mandated to be purchased or applied to directly to a student's account by the university. No matter if the student has already brought their own health insurance policy, which is an international policy, which they're still paying for. So now you're paying double. So trying to be mindful of what are my projected costs, right?
Mindfulness. Yes, that's very important.
Very important. So
shall we move on?
Yes, we can move on. So it's career management services, right? So many of us are always looking at, well, my only focus is getting a job, is getting an internship, right? And I can understand that. I can completely understand that, because one of the primary reasons why we might be undertaking the degree to which we're being enrolled into is to find a suitable job, is to add value to that discipline, right? As an employee or as a startup entrepreneur, right? So there's a lot of factors that go into this. For example, career management as it stands in the US is drastically different than how we may be working on a placement level in
India.
India, right? So internships and job fairs do take place on campus. The students are, as you can see, I've put a photo in here of a snippet of a room. So you typically have a larger hall where you have employers who are there with their booths, and there might be several different folks from different departments or even from HR who might be there speaking to students, right? So now it becomes very important for the student to understand, what is my unique value proposition? Why is that important when considering a university? Because different universities have different strengths, right? But the assumption that I'm working off of is that a student might be admitted to 3 different universities for the same program. While the academically may be of an excellent caliber, yes, what are the prospects for employment in terms of internships, in terms of co-ops, in terms of full-time jobs, of course, right?
Any other skill building opportunities that the university is providing the student, right?
Exactly. So I mentioned that local employers, you must also consider what are the local employers like. Obviously, they would be visiting for these career fairs on those specific weeks or days as well. But if you consider larger metro areas where you see that there are a lot more universities or colleges in a significantly smaller radius, you'll also see that the competition typically for local position might increase because by default you might have a lot more students competing for it, right? So that's also something to consider, but be mindful that you don't want to have that short-sightedness to say, well, I have been admitted to this university, I will be deciding to go to a certain city and I will stay there for my job, which is completely fine if you decide to pursue a job in that city, but the goal is for you to explore, right?
Yes.
There is 50 different states. You want to understand if there are employers coming in from outside of the state or outside of the country, do approach them, right? So something you can do right now today would be to go onto the career management websites of the colleges to where you've been admitted. Typically, career management centers will provide you the lists of employers that have visited in the past, maybe the last semester or previous semesters. They'll also offer you anecdotal evidence in terms of where have our students gone, what kinds of trajectories or paths have students pursued at X
department,
exactly at this company, for example, right? So there might be companies on there that you might see that yes, this company visits this campus, that's great, but keep in mind that there are plenty of companies that do visit campuses remotely or virtually as well. So you might not never discount a university just by saying, well, this is located in a certain place and there are no employers. Well, dig into it further. If you wish, you may also write to the Career Management Center because they usually are responsive as well in asking, when you ask something of this sort, where would you be able to direct me to a link which shows which employers came for the most recent career fair, right? It's as simple as that. So it's also, as you notice, I'm speaking entirely about the universities now, but this time should also be used for self-reflection, right? So one size doesn't fit all. So while there might be 10 fantastic Fortune 500 companies and brilliant names, obviously, who are visiting a campus, that might not be a good fit for you, right? So understand where it is you're looking to go to. Understand that you might have to pivot rather fast if you're going for a 2-year program versus a 4-year program. If you are going for a 4-year undergraduate bachelor's degree, you have at least 1.5 years or so to officially declare your major, minor, concentration, etc. So everyone's predicament is different. So stay in line with what you're enrolled into, obviously, and maintain those deadlines, so to speak, of declaring the major, but also understand that this is a stepping stone. This degree is a stepping stone into a job or a set of jobs, or 5 years later, where do I see myself? So that brings me to my next point, which is alumni relations, right? Typically, what we just spoke about, career management. Many students see this as, well, this is my short-term return on investment. This is the job I will get, which will
catapult me to
exactly my dream job, which will come much later. And once I am making this amount of a salary package, I'll be able to pay back the loans, etc. Which is a very, very rational way of looking at it. Absolutely. Right? And we must be realistic about it as well, right? But on the other hand, I would like students to also consider the strengths of the alumni network for each of the colleges to where they have been admitted, right? So in the US, we always say that, for example, I attended Thunderbird School of Global Management, right, for my master's. So I have a significant association with them as an alumna of that college, where if I approach another alum, there's an automatic conversation starter, automatic bond, where we can start speaking about our experiences there, and potentially that might lead to another professional development opportunity, whether that comes in the form of a job or a connection that they might open me up to. Exactly. So understand that while an alumni network may not be as a prized or as an important factor in India, it's extremely important in the US. Like I mentioned, networking is of prime importance. I must also mention, I wanted to put a little plug in there and say, if you're not already on LinkedIn, this is a great time to get yourself on LinkedIn. Establish your profile on there. If you're unable to reach out to the colleges, or if they're unable to share information, or if they are, that's fantastic, because there are many stories of alumni and successful alumni, what they're doing today on universities' websites. However, if you don't find that, or if you find that you want more information, LinkedIn is a great tool for you to use in the sense that you can automatically input the name of the university, maybe the name of the department or the major discipline into which you've been admitted, and then search simply and then say graduates of or graduated from that college, and you will get an entire list of folks at several different rungs of the career ladder, so to speak, who are doing different things, right? This will also show you that it's not a linear process, right? I can be admitted into one discipline, but 1 or 2 or 3 roles later, I might be in an entirely completely different discipline in the same function, right? Or I might be in a completely different function. So in the US, this is very common. This brings me to the concept of unique selling proposition or unique value proposition, right? I want students to start thinking about that, right? Which university will be a fit for you in terms of your trajectory path will also be significantly defined by what it is you see yourself as providing value to an employer, to an organization, to a class, right?
Yes.
So just as much as let's say there's a class of 100 people for one of your core classes, all the other 99 folks have their unique value proposition and on what they're contributing academically to a classroom, professionally to an interview, and then furthermore, fiscally, I should say, to a company at the end of the day, right? If they're joining a company.
To a person, to one's own,
Absolutely.
Financial development, right? And this is not just true for the graduate applicants. It is so true for the undergraduate applicants as well, right? Even at their high school level, they have to look at getting themselves into the social media where, opening a LinkedIn account is so vital.
Absolutely, yes. And what it actually shows you is, gives you examples of what have other folks who have graduated from a similar discipline, what have they done? What has their career trajectory been? And that will open your mind, your mindset in the sense that there are departments I didn't know existed within said company that I am now interested in learning more about. So the more you can learn, the more you can research and teach yourself, the better decision you'll be able to take, the more well-informed decision you'll be able to take, right? So that covers my 6 points, I believe. So going to the next slide, these are just some concerns, some pitfalls to avoid that I wanted to throw in here, right? I hear this a lot from students where they say, well, I have 3 friends who applied to the same university and I want to study along with them. So herd mentality is something you should be really mindful of. Just keep in mind, these friends will not be there giving the interview that you'll be giving to a company.
Absolutely.
They will not be there. Exactly.
Yes.
They will not be there taking the tests that you will be taking, the exams, right? It's important to understand this is a very, we always say that the last point I'm making, familiarity doesn't guarantee a good fit. So I often hear that I have a relative staying in such and such city where I've applied, so it's perfect, I'll just go there. Because said relative tells me that this is such and such. That's great, but have you done your own research? Have you spoken to current students? Have you maybe reached out to alumni or looked up alumni to see what they're doing today? Have you considered all of the other 6 factors that we talked about to see if this was for you, right? While there might be a high caliber institution with an excellent faculty, excellent academic instruction, there are just folks who just might not thrive in that environment physically, right? So it's important to understand that while it would be a lot of fun to attend a university with 3 of your friends, obviously when you have jobs or when you apply for jobs, you will be splitting off at some point. So this is take an individualistic decision as much as possible, but don't just, so decision paralysis, I put this on here for a reason, right? Because we tend to overanalyze a lot of things. We say, well, I forgot about that. Try and trust your gut in this sense, right? Your intuition, the experiences you've had in applying to a certain university, it hasn't happened overnight. It's taken maybe a year, maybe a couple of months for you to apply and go through the process. What have you come to learn about this university? Are you speaking to other folks who have been admitted to this university? Do you have a sense of, are they high achievers? Do they have goals? Are they strong candidates for jobs, for example, right? Because employability is just as important as finding the right fit, right? And all the factors that we discussed. So while I encourage you to do your research, don't just rely on every fact and every ranking that you scrutinize.
Internalizing, to understand how that particular university or a program is going to be fulfilling all your priorities and goals and aspirations, isn't it, Niky?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's always some, cost-benefit ratio, like I say. So there's always, well, this university is located in a warmer place and I don't really want the 4 seasons, but this university is providing me such and such scholarship, and this one is providing me a strong career. There's always pros and cons, but I always tell students, you are going to get out of it what you put into it, right? So for example, if a career fair is taking place and a student does not wish to attend that day, that is completely on the student, right? So like I said, you want to be prepared. Don't stress yourself to the point that you're really aggravated even before you reach the US, because your time there will fly by. I can guarantee you that, hopefully in a good way.
There's no
right?
time. Yeah.
Exactly. So what we'll do, we'll move on to the next slide. I just wanted to kind of leave this here and end with this. So like I said, keep an open mind. Do your research. This is the right time to do research. You have some time, but I also wanted to mention deadlines are extremely important in the US, right? So you might have several different deadlines. There are programs that might say, you must confirm your admission or intend to enroll in said program by such and such date, which would entail putting a deposit of funds, obviously, $500, sometimes more, etc. Understand that, clarify that if there's a deadline, there might be a certain date by which you have to submit your financial documents to receive the I-20. And also, after you receive the I-20, check on the visa processing times as well. So the appointment times for visas at the different consulates around the world drastically vary based on the month and on the season, etc. These are very important things to consider. While you don't have all the time in the world in deciding, you would have maybe a week or so, I would say, since we're already the end of February.
End of the process,
right? Exactly.
Sure.
So connect with current students, alumni. I should add to this, connect to the admissions services members who you might have been speaking with, or who you may have never have interacted with, but reach out to them. There's no such thing as a silly question. Trust me, they've received this question many times from other students. So it's if someone is asking, well, what is the accessibility from a apartment to a certain campus? That is a completely viable question, and that's a legitimate question that you should be
it's
asked.
a valid question,
right?
Yes.
And then, of course, Education USA is always here to help you assess the pros and cons between your admits as well. And I think if you are in a location where you have a center, definitely go, because it helps you remove yourself from the process. Sometimes getting an objective perspective is exactly what you needed, because keep in mind, the decision makers that I mentioned before might be parents, they might be spouses, they might be other family members who might be financially supporting you or may not be, but they are invested in you making the right decision, because their life is also impacted by you making that decision. And sometimes removing yourself from that stressful situation and taking a third party opinion from a professional would be really beneficial.
Absolutely, yes. So we have come to the end. So this is Niky's, contact details. So we have a couple of questions that has come today. I'll just read it out, Niky, so you can answer them. What is the difference between placement cell and career services office?
This is a great question. So we touched upon this a little bit, right?
Yes,
the concept of placement cells, as we know them in India, are to the point where there are certain benchmarks in terms of grades that a student might achieve or surpass for them to have a chance to interview with or to meet with a certain list of companies that will come to campus. These companies will typically have a list of roles or opportunities or openings, which they'll say, we have 10 of these openings for which we'd like 10 students, etc. So it's a very lockstep process, right? So a student is given a lot more hand-holding throughout that process, where if I achieve more than this percentage or higher than these marks, I have a fairly likely chance of getting placed with a company, right? So in the US, that mindset is actually flipped on its head, right? So when we say career management services, this is the Career Management Center. There is a whole team dedicated to helping a student identify, help them with self-reflection as well to a certain degree, right? But help them identify their unique selling proposition, unique value proposition, help them redo their resume, help them understand how to write cover letters. There's also etiquette classes that they might conduct. Typically, there's a lot of programming that they offer a student throughout the semester, which is not mandatory for the student to attend, but which, if a student attends, in my opinion, will really put them night and day apart from any other student. One such example is they would have short seminars on how to network in America, right? So they will tell you kind of the basic principles of how to approach a networking situation, whether that's virtually, whether that's in person, and they might actually throw you into an uncomfortable situation, because that's really where that growth comes from, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's helpful to understand that you want to have a very strong idea, especially if you're going into a master's program, which is either 1 or 2 years, very short time when you can figure out, right?
Yeah.
For you to understand what are the types of companies I'm targeting. Maybe identify it as what are the functions and what are the industries I'm targeting, right? Because functions can help carry you from industry to industry relatively, with relative ease, I should say. But not understanding what you want to do and landing at the university and hoping that the career management center, will tell you, oh, here, apply for these colleges, that would not be happening, right? So you want to have a really strong, and keep in mind, the more you utilize the services of that career management center, the more of a serious candidate you would be perceived as, so to speak, because the staff that you're working with day in and day out, the advisors who you're assigned to work with, they understand that you are putting in the effort. You are a serious candidate, right? And understand that they will also help you connect with not just companies that are coming there physically or locally, but they'll also help you connect with the domestic career affairs and the network and the alumni and all. There's so
the start, right?
It's just the start, right? So keep an open mind, but also be prepared.
Yeah. That's a lovely answer to this question, you know. So the next question is, ASU does not have co-op, correct?
Yes. So most of the programs, would not have co-ops.
So the student is asking, how will I get skills?
So this is the great question.
In the absence of co-op.
Right. So we're speaking of skill building here, right? So typically we tend to place skill building into different buckets. We say we have co-ops, we say we have internships, then we have a job, right? So considering, let's assume you're going there for a 2-year program, which flies by pretty fast, because as soon as you enter, let's say you're going to enter in the fall semester, which is the next semester that will be starting in August. September, October, November is how early companies will be coming to campus to speak to you.
That's so close.
Or an internship or a co-op for the next summer, which is 9 months away, right? So you have to have the foresight. Now, for example, if your program you're admitted into does not have a co-op, you have a lot of other opportunities. You have internships, you have capstone projects, which are directly industry related. So again, this comes back up to faculty, right? Faculty members typically reach out to their industry contacts and have larger companies or SMEs, for example, who come to them and say, we have a certain project, which would you be open to having your students in such and such level of your class tackle, right? And there will be a deliverable, which will be a tripartite deliverable. For example, there will be a presentation of the official report. There will also be an academic deliverable, which will be for grading from the professor, obviously. Right? And then there will be the professional deliverable, which would be the solution or that the student or the group of students is providing to the company to provide a solution to the challenge. Right? So putting that on your resume directly helps me, for example, as an employer, if I'm speaking to a student, understand the concept of show, don't tell, right? Show me what it is you've done. Don't tell me your critical thinker. Show me how you've approached a problem as such. Show me how you've approached this challenge. So a lot of opportunities, also projects we have in consulting. You could be a consultant for a semester in an emerging market anywhere halfway across the world and be working in a group of 4 and actually have the same deliverables.
And that can be remote.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's a great thing. And then there are volunteering opportunities where, you know, so if you're looking for skills, there are thousands of ways.
We didn't even touch upon the clubs and associations on campus, right? Where you can be the leadership, the programming chair or the vice president or the activity chair. There's a lot of different roles you can take, and keep in mind, every student you meet with, a colleague of yours, is a connection of yours who you can add value to and who can help you as well at some point in time. Maybe that's a month from now, maybe that's 10 years from now when you might hire them for your startup, right? I mean, life is a funny thing, so.
Absolutely true. So yeah, we'll go on to the next question. Any scholarships available for athletes?
This is a very valid question. So I know a lot of students have this question as well. If you have attained a high level of athletic proficiency or have played any sort of sport, this varies from college to college, right? Because an international student would not be eligible, for example, for the FAFSA, which is the federal aid in the US. Many athletic scholarships depend on the citizenship of the student as well. So while there may be significant athletic scholarships available for domestic students, there may not be some for international students. So instead of assuming that because there's a lively sport environment, or that the college is participating in the Pac-12 or for example, that doesn't guarantee automatically that there's athletic scholarships. So in this case, the athletics department and
that's a lovely answer to this question as well. So can a PhD student work schooling?
That's another great question, right? So PhD students, so their course of study varies, right? In the sense that they don't necessarily have a guaranteed time frame during which they would complete their degree, so to speak. So it can vary from 3 years to 5 to maybe 7 years. Keep in mind, most PhD students have a graduate assistantship, or what we would call a teaching assistantship, by default added to their admittance letter or admissions letter, admit letter, right? This comes in the form of a tuition stipend already. So the tuition stipend varies from department to department within a university even, right? So it's entirely dependent on the caliber of the student, on the needs of the department. So if you are a student who has been admitted to a PhD program, clarify whether there's a stipend attached to that and what that entails, because chances are that might already be a TA position, which you'll be undertaking for a certain number of hours per week, in addition to completing your research. Right. So that's a very case-by-case basis.
Wonderful. Now we have another question. Does ASU offer PhD in CS, computer science? And is the program fully funded?
That's a very specific question. So I'm glad we're on the topic of PhDs, right? The way in which a PhD program would work essentially depends on the needs of a department, and more specifically on the needs of a professor, right, within a department. If a student is interested in applying for a PhD, the first thing I would suggest for them to do would be to identify maybe 1 or 2 professors with whom they want to work, and why. That why has to be a very strong sense of purpose. It needs to align very closely with their research, maybe what the research that the student has done. So there might be openings, yes, but it depends from program to program. If they're looking for something in AI, for example, that might be different than something else, right? Something that is on the cusp of robotics and autonomous systems under the umbrella of CS, right? So I would want them to look at the faculty first, reach out individually, and then see how they can apply. Like I said, funding varies. There's also funding that is offered up until $1,500 per month that is given to students. Of course, that's not guaranteed. That entirely depends on the students.
Yeah, that's great. Another question: how much does the location matter for choosing the college? I think you have answered that previously as well. But then, so if they run through the presentation, they can get the answer again. So we have a question from the audience in the center. Is CPT and OPT the same for students studying at any university in the US? Explain generally about CPT and what is OPT.
Sure. So I think in terms of opportunities, they might be asking, right?
Yes,
so CPT, curricular practical training, would typically be undertaken while the student is still pursuing their academic course of study, before they have graduated, essentially, right? Before they have been conferred that official degree. Now, OPT, which is optional practical training, would be provided after they have graduated, right? So typically a student would have up to 90 days post-graduation to secure that job, secure that employment. If they're, so that would be the OPT. Now, there's nothing that says that a student may not participate in CPT or OPT, but there are clauses where if you have previously studied for your bachelor's in the US and have utilized a certain amount of CPT or OPT, that might have implications if you're coming back on an F1 visa as a graduate student, which would then have to be discussed with the international students and scholar centers. So there are opportunities, and I would encourage every student to pursue CPT, to pursue an internship, right? Because skill building is just as important, if not more important, than academics as well.
Yeah, but there's a timeline involved with the CPT, correct? There's something like a little shy than 12 months is what they have to also keep in mind. So
Right,
they need to,
right.
they need
They
to be
have to-
very particular.
Exactly. And you have to be vigilant about when you're applying to internship opportunities as well. So
Yeah.
there might be certain companies that might say, if you're on CPT, we may not be able to have you working here. Or if you are, there are certain metrics you have to ensure that your visa status is always updated with the International Students Office. So if you are looking to pursue CPT, make sure that you're letting not only the visa office of the college know, but also the career management center.
Oh, okay. So, okay, is choosing a college in Indiana over New York with similar coursework make a difference from a location perspective? Oh, it's very, very specific.
Very specific, right? So again, I would ask, what part of New York State, or do they mean the city?
So we have no clue. So
Right.
it is definitely an open-ended question. Yeah, there's a follow-up question to it.
To the second one.
Yeah.
So I would say, so in that case, in the Indiana versus New York question, I really think if you go back to the slides that we just showed, there were 6 points on there, right? How is it that you personally prioritize them, right? If everything else is the same and is standard, then what is it that you're looking to do in terms of after your university? Understand that just because you're attending a college in New York may not mean that you're going to pursue a job there immediately.
True.
Yes, you might pursue something that might be a launch pad for you, right? Or you might attend a college in Indiana and end up pursuing a job in New York, or vice versa. So again, if you're looking at it in a very pragmatic perspective, what is the cost of living, right? Are you going to be in a more suburban area? If you're looking at cost of living, not only for the duration of your course of study, how will that vary once you're employed, depending on, for example, students always say, well, the salary for this discipline is much higher. And I say, well, that might be the average salary, for example, because the salary might be significantly higher in certain parts of California, for example, right? Which have a higher standard of living. Correct. And while the same position in another state, which is not California or that metro area, might be different because of the geographical location.
Yeah, and the cost of living and such. So yeah, I think we have come to the end of the session. I will just quickly go through the details of how students can connect with Education USA in terms of, to join us and that. Before that, I would love to thank Niky for today's, sorry, Niky, go ahead with your water. So, it's a lovely session today. It's been a lot of information, a lot of very, very valuable information. I'm sure that, all of our audience would have really, were benefited by this lovely presentation.
And if they have further questions, they're always welcome to reach out to us.
Yes, definitely. So Niky's email contact was shared in this presentation for a long time. You can definitely take that down and then reach out to Niky. She'll be more than happy to connect you to the right people to answer your queries and to clarify all your doubts. And this is how you can connect with Education USA. We are available in all of the social media channels, right from Facebook to Instagram to Twitter. And also we have a lot of valuable videos, very informative videos in YouTube as well. So please log into all of these, arenas and connect with us. Then you have to, make note of these 2 important websites. One is the educationusa.state.gov website. So this is the Education USA overall website, which gives you a lot of information on the different Education USA centers that are there across the world, and also the various scholarship availability with different universities, different departments in a certain university, and so many other information about the university as well. So, and then we have the local website, which is the Education USA Bangalore website, which is called the www.yashnatrust.org website. There you have a listing of all the events that keeps happening at our center, so you can see what are the events that would be that you would be interested in, and then you can come over and visit us. These are all for free. We also conduct webinars every other Saturday at 10 a.m. University representatives from different US universities conduct these webinars, as well as us Education USA advisors also do conduct these webinars on very, very important topics for both the undergrad and the graduate students, as well as the PhD students, or anybody who is interested in studying in the US. As well as we have an open house for both parents and students who are interested in coming and visiting us, and getting your doubts clarified, getting your questions answered. You want to know where to prepare, where to start, what are the things to keep in mind, what are the entrance examinations for both undergraduate and graduate. So students, please come over. These are all free sessions that Education USA offers. Every Saturday at 11:30 a.m. we have an open house at our office in Frasertown, Bangalore. So this is the address and the phone number that we, about us. So we also have, Education USA also has an app, which is called the Education USA app, where you can actually find, a lot of questions and a lot of frequently asked questions posted up there, and get your, doubts clarified again. If you have any other doubts and things that have to be clarified, you can put up your questions there, and we'll make sure that we're answering as well. And many of the events that are happening all across the Indian Education USA centers, you can definitely see all of that and connect and visit them as well. So thank you for a very, very interactive evening today. Thank you, Niky. Until we connect next time, signing off, both Niky and